Welcome to the Landscaping Podcast. My name is Joel Barnett and I'm your host. And in today's episode, I'm talking with Charlie Albone from Inspired Exteriors. Charlie runs a design, construction and maintenance business in Sydney and also one of the presenters on Better Homes and Gardens. And he's been working in TV for about 16 years. So I talked to him about the challenges of working in TV while you're trying to run your own business. And he's got a really awesome story about how he started in horticulture. So it was just a freak luck situation that got him his first gig working in a garden. So it's pretty cool hearing that story early on. And I loved one of the points he made early also in the episode about how when you start out working for yourself, you're going to make a lot more mistakes in those early days, but having to own up to them and pay for them yourself is a good way to learn. So you certainly learn a lot more by paying for your own mistakes. And we also talk about the Chelsea gardens that Charlie's done, as well as his other show gardens in Melbourne and Sydney, about what those experiences are like. And he's also doing a show garden this year at the Melbourne International Flower Garden Show. And I asked him about one of the most amazing projects that I've ever seen, which is a vertical garden in Singapore in the Shangri-La Hotel, which is just insane to look at. So it's well worth looking that up. And it was fascinating to hear how it went about that and how quick it all went together, actually. So yes, loved having this chat with Charlie, and there's good stuff in here for people to learn from. So hopefully you enjoy this chat with Charlie Albone. Charlie, thank you very much for joining us on the Landscaping Podcast. My first question for you is, how did you start in the industry?
It's interesting. So I was trying to get over to Australia to come out backpacking, and I was working 3 jobs. So I was a painter and decorator during the day. So I'd start from 7, work through till about 5. Then I'd drive to a pub and I'd work in a pub from 6 till midnight. And I'd do that 5 days a week. And then I'd work in the pub on the weekends as well in the evening. So I was earning, I think, £4 an hour or something, which was like $8 an hour. Nothing. I was like just putting in hours rather than quality work, And I was driving towards the pub one night and this drunk driver cut in front of me and smashed into these gates of this house and took off. And I was late for work, of course. So I went to the pub, and then the next day I thought, I've really got to go in and see that guy. I was the only one around. I saw this car crash and it took off. And so I'm really sorry I didn't get your number plate, didn't get a number plate, but it was a black Vauxhall Calibra. And the guy goes, thank you for coming and telling me that. That's really helpful. Do you know anyone your age who's looking for a job? Help me with the garden. And I said to him, look, I'm trying to go to Australia backpacking, but if you can have me on the weekends during the day, I'll work for you. And I started working with him, doing some amazing stuff like learning how to prune roses properly, putting stripes in lawns, real high-end maintenance stuff. And I remember the moment I fell in love with landscaping, because he was watching me cut the grass behind this cylinder mower that was pulling me along. And he goes, come over here. And I was sure I was going to get fired. The stripes were just like, it was like Dr. Zeus. It was just, I was terrible at it. Anyway, he goes, come have a look at this. And he took me up to this grassy bit. And I remember seeing a snakeskin fritillaria bulb poking through the lawn. And I just couldn't believe that this thing was a living thing coming from the ground. It's just like this nodding head. It looks like, as if you haven't seen it, it's like it's covered in purple snakeskin. It blows your mind. And that was it. I thought, this is it. I've got to do this. And strangely enough, when I first went to the Chelsea Flower Show, I interviewed Wes Fleming on his garden at the time, and he goes, come check this out. And he took me into the marquee and he goes, have a look at this snakeskin fritillaria. It's like, it blows my mind. And I just, the link, I think that's when I fell in love with show gardening for sure. Anyway, so yeah, that was it really.
So what were you doing at that Chelsea Flower Show the first time?
The first time I went, I was actually over in the UK for my brother's wedding. And I said to the Lifestyle Channel, because I'd done a couple of years on the Lifestyle Channel, I said to them, I'm going to be in London, Chelsea Flower Show's on. Basically, I wanted a free ticket. I'm like, should we make a TV show over there? And they're like, okay, why not? And so that was it, yeah.
Yeah, nice. Who did you start working for when you came over here? Like, how did that all start?
So I was traveling around. I went to the pub with a mate, actually having a beer with a mate. And he said, my brother needs a hand landscaping, doing some maintenance. Can you help him out tomorrow? And I was like, yeah, sure. I didn't have a job at the time. And I thought I'd be, pruning roses and striping lawns and stuff. And I met him out at the Coca-Cola factory car park. And I basically had a blower in my hand for 8 hours a day, pushing leaves from one end to the other and back in my hand. When you first use a petrol blower and your hand's going crazy. I had all that, but, I stuck with it. And I went to TAFE over here and studied over here. And whilst I was working at TAFE, I was working for another landscaper, but it was a very different setup. I was doing construction, but it was a head down do the work, no talking, serious, get work done type of thing. And I thought to myself, like, we just work so much, and I love the industry, but I'm not enjoying it. And I thought, I can't enjoy it if I'm working for this guy. So I'm going to start my own business, and went from there and started my own business and thought, I'd be working 4 days a week and it'd be the best thing in the world. And working 7 days a week, and I've never worked harder to get it off the ground. But yeah, that's sort of how I started my own business as well.
Yeah, so you'd be playing golf on that day off and just, you'd be rich. Just great times.
Yeah. My advice for people who want to start their own business is don't do it.
So did you go with Inspired Exteriors to start with, or was it a different name?
Yeah, no, I started with Inspired Exteriors, and that's kind of stuck. I actually I asked my mum what I should name my business, and she said, "Oh, I think Inspirational Gardens." And I said, "No, but thanks. I'll go with Inspired Exteriors."
Same thing, just different meaning.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And then what sort of work were you doing to start off with?
Anything I could get my hands on. So because I was studying horticulture and landscape design, I would design gardens, but not have enough design work to keep going. So then I'd have to build them as well. And in all honesty, I probably shouldn't have been building some of them. They were smaller jobs, but you know how they grow and grow. And I'd always chuck my hat in. Yeah, I'll give it a go. But I learned so much doing that. Like, I'll admit I made mistakes. I always, hand on heart, always went back and fixed everything, every mistake I've ever made. But that was a great learning experience for me, to see what works, what doesn't work, why. You learn a lot when your own money is paying for somebody else's garden.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's a good way to start as well by doing design and maintenance or construction. Like, just take on as many things as you can, because you're not also like you're going to learn what you like doing more, but it's also getting you more work because one doesn't sustain the other.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you need to do all of them to be, if you want to be a designer at the end, you need to have had construction experience, you need to have had maintenance experience to see how plants grow, to see how things go together. It's a holistic approach. You can't just do one thing.
So did you have plans to start your own business before you were working for that fella, or did it just happen because you want to work for him?
Just happened, really. It just sort of went, I'll just do it. Again, it's the 4-day week that I thought this would be great. And I had another guy who said, "Oh, look, if you do that, I can give you a couple of days work a week contracting with me." And I thought, well, that's a great safe way to kind of do it. I've always got those 2 days. And when you're younger and single and you don't have a care in the world, no kids, nothing to look after, you do stuff like that. So
yeah. And then how did that all start building up, like the design side of things as well?
Just over time, slowly build it up over time. And then I was sent an email from Albone, who I was with at the time, saying try out for this TV show, and it went out to every member. And I'd split up with my ex-girlfriend of 7 years. I met her when I first came out traveling, split up with her, and I gave her a call because we're still in touch, and said, "Look, I've been asked to try out for this show. What do you think?" Because it's kind of a big thing. She goes, "Look, you'll never put the video in. And if you do, you'll be shit at it." And that was like a red rag to a bull. So I was like, okay, I'm going to do it. I got one of my mates I was living with, who I said, "You're the only one who's not going to take the piss out of me. Come to one of my gardens, film me as I walk around talking," because he wanted to be an actor. So I was like, oh, great. So he filmed me. I handed the video in for selling houses, and they said, "No, thank you very much." So I went, okay, that's great, not a problem. My brother came out. We were like, let's go to Thailand for a week, because I'm not going to do this TV show. And so that was great. And then got an email whilst I was over there saying, "Look, it's not worked out with the person we had. Can you come back and do a screen test?" And I said, "Yep, pick me up from the airport and I'll do it." And I did a screen test that afternoon. And then 2 days later, I was filming the series.
Yeah, right. And you've done nothing before like that at all?
No TV, no. I think because the screen test went so well, because I thought I was famous already, and went and got really drunk in Thailand and rocked up with a massive hangover. Shouldn't really admit that, but I did. I had a massive hangover off the flight and was I think just relaxed enough to do it. So
yeah. It's funny you talk about that video, because I applied for that position when you left, and that video, like I like putting out me being an idiot.
Yeah,
I'm happy to take the piss out of myself.
Yeah.
But the video I did that I sent in is so bad that I'll probably never release it. It's just horrendous. Yeah. People wouldn't laugh at it. They just feel sorry for me. Like, that's so bad.
That's the problem with TV work. Like when you start any job, you rubbish at it. But on TV, everyone sees it, and then it will be brought up again and again and again. Look how rubbish you were when you started. It's like, yeah, thank you, thanks.
Yeah, I saw a post that either yourself or your wife did the other day, but you've been that was 15 years ago. You've been in it.
Yes.
That's
Yeah.
insane. That long.
Yeah, so I did 13 years of selling houses, and they still play. Like that one that my wife put up was the very first day I'd ever shot anything, which was terrifying. So I did that, and then I've done Better Homes and Gardens now for 3 years. So it's like 16 years ago. Yeah.
Yeah. And do you still love doing it as much as you did at the start?
I didn't love it at the start. It was a
Right.
very odd feeling having a camera in your face and people going, okay, can you do that again? Can you try and be funny now? It's just like, I found it really difficult. But there was a kind of a point, I think it might have even been at a Melbourne Flower Show, when I was walking around and a young girl came up to me. She's like, oh, I didn't really know what I wanted to do with my life. And I was watching you on TV and thought you looked like you're having fun. And so now I'm studying horticulture. And that kind of like blew me away, that actually people are watching this and I'm inspiring people to get into gardening and stuff. And then I was like, oh, well, this is cool. And I started really enjoying it, knowing that there was people watching and could get into landscaping, because I mean, it's a great industry to be in. I know I said don't start your own business, but it is a fantastic industry to be in, and to be able to inspire people is great. And Better Homes is even better at doing that.
Yeah, right. And I imagine the relationships that you like, because the relationship you have with Andrew Winter seemed like a pretty genuine one. You can't fake that. I wouldn't.
No, I mean, I'm good friends with Andrew. Like when I've been up to the Gold Coast for events and stuff, he's nice enough to look after my kids so I can go and do stuff. You know, we're still really good friends. Yeah, he's a great guy.
So that makes it a lot easier as well. And then I imagine harder to leave too.
Yeah, it was a tough decision, but the timing was perfect, really. You know, it's like when you film for 9 months of the year with selling houses, and you're away every second week. You're away for the full week, and then the following week you're away for 2 days. So as your kids get older, that's just, I was like platinum with Virgin and Qantas. I was traveling that much. So it was getting to the point where it was starting to wear me down and not have enough hours in the day. So it was a good move. Yeah.
And how did the first Chelsea garden that you built come about?
I built a garden at the first Sydney Garden Show in Centennial Park.
All right.
And Andrew Fisher-Tomlin was the head adjudicator for gardens at Chelsea, and he was brought out as a special guest for that. And I was talking to him about show gardens and stuff, and he gave me some fantastic advice about my garden and the planting and what was letting it down and how it needed to be more developed. And I really took that on well. And I said to him, I've been thinking of doing a garden at Chelsea. He's like, oh, okay, what is it? I said, it's a really great concept, awesome concept. I can't wait to share it with you. I'll put an application. He's like, just tell me now. I said, no, I'd rather do that. And the reason I didn't tell him was because I had no idea what I was going to do. I was just bluffing my way through it. So then I started thinking, if you're going to build a garden at Chelsea, it's probably something you're only going to do once in your lifetime because it's so expensive and it's so difficult to do. So what would you do? And my father passed away when I was 15. So I thought, I'm going to build a garden of all the things that I love to tell him about my life since he passed away. Because he's got no idea I'm a landscaper. He's got no idea I live in Australia, kids, family, all that stuff. So I designed the garden to walk through with my late father and show him sort of stuff about my life. And I put that in the brief and sent that off. And then Andrew Fisher-Tomlin actually emailed me nicely enough saying it was a great brief and he'd love to have me. So, I didn't have the sponsorship for it, so then had to go around scrounging to try and find what is a hell of a lot of money to build a garden on the other side of the world for a week.
It's an awesome brief to have, and that's what inspired me for the brief behind my first garden at the garden show that I designed. So mine was called A Young Family. So I've been lucky enough my folks are still alive, so I just made one to spend time with my family in it. But that's but yours was the sort of the inspiration behind that.
Oh, that's cool.
And then this year's one as well, because I've got 3 kids and it's got 3 bean bags in there. One of them's a soccer ball bean bag because one of the kids is a soccer nut. So I love designing them based on your family because you get a lot more passion involved in it.
You do, and the best gardens are based around family. I mean, building show gardens are great, but the best gardens are ones that you can create memories in. And if you're lucky enough to have a family, you want to do it in a garden, create those memories in a garden with your family.
Yeah. So what was Chelsea like for your first experience building there?
It's mad. So I did that kind of magazine show with Lifestyle Channel. Then I went back the next year and made a documentary about Philip Johnson when he won Best in Show. So I made a documentary about that, which was cool to see behind the scenes. Then the year after that, I went back and helped build a garden for Landform that was designed by Kate Gould and Alan Titchmarsh. So I got to work with Alan Titchmarsh and Kate Gould building their garden, which was quite alcohol heavy, that that trip was, but it was an eye opener. And then I went back to do my own 2 gardens. So I went for quite a few years in a row, and it's just such a buzz, you know. As you know, building it at Melbourne, everyone's so supportive and like-minded. It's just like on steroids at Chelsea, because you're building for 21 days, super long days, and it's generally cold and wet, but everyone's like-minded, and there's just a real buzz there. It's a great place to be.
So is that open for a week, as did you say?
Yeah, so it opens for a week. Sunday to Sunday, yeah.
It's crazy. There's that much longer to build it, but it's open a similar amount of time.
Yeah, it is crazy. And at the last part of the show, in the last hour, they ring a bell called the sell-off. And so people can just buy parts of your garden, like plants. So they'll go, how many, I want some Aquilegia, how much is it? It's like, oh, it's £5. Okay, how much for 3? 10 quid. All right. So you literally rip it out the garden, put it in a plastic bag and like chuck it at people. So, and people like chucking cash at you. And it's just like this crazy, mad, frenetic thing, because everyone who's worked on the garden is pulling bits out and, you know, trying to sell off as much as you can. And when you turn around at the end of the hour and a half, you're exhausted, but the garden is just trashed and the whole thing is all over. But there was one guy who came up to me and goes, oh, I've seen your tree ferns on the BBC, and I've got 200 quid. Can I please just buy one off you? And I was like, yeah, sure. This thing would have been 8 foot tall, probably 90 kilos, soaking wet. And we just lifted it out and gave it to this guy. And I saw him tootle off with it on his shoulder. And came out the year after and goes, oh, I was the tree fern guy. I was like, yeah. How the hell did you get that thing home? He's like, oh, I just took it on the tube. Just took it on the tube with me. A tree fern. I was like, mate, whatever you want from this garden, you can have. That's a great story. Just help yourself.
Yeah, that's a different story to Melbourne garden shows. Like at the end of that, a lot of people start sort of getting their plants put aside for their nurseries to come and collect. Yeah. And sometimes if people are doing that before the last guest has left, and they start yelling at you saying, oh, pay my money, you haven't finished yet, stop ripping it apart. Yeah, that'd be nicer.
In Melbourne, you keep everything in pots, and with Chelsea, you have to plant everything, really. You take it out of pots and plant it. But a lot of people do that over there because they can put it into a job. But, you know, we can't bring all the plants back to Australia, so it's just like, let's sell it off. And you turn £100,000 into about £7,000 in an hour. That's it. That's what you get.
That's wild. So how did it go about when you started working in TV? How did your current business go? Like, how did you keep that ticking along?
It was kind of tricky to start with to balance not being there for clients because it was relatively small, and you know the time management and client management was quite difficult. But you just make it up as you go along. There was years when it was busier than others. Now it's much easier because I'm in Sydney a lot more, and I've developed a team and all that sort of stuff, and the business has moved on a lot more. So you just got to have the right people. You know, it's funny. I'm always advertising for stuff, and some of the people that apply for stuff to work me. I was just like, I don't even know if I should write back to you because you're just not the right person. And people are like, how much money are you paying? It's off the bat.
I like the ones where they'll send through an application letter saying they're looking to get into plumbing and hoping to start a successful plumbing career. Maybe change that.
Yeah. Yes.
So how many staff do you have at the moment working
there's about I think 10 or 12 all up. Yeah.
And you're doing design and construction still?
Design, construction and maintenance, yeah.
Oh.
So the maintenance side is relatively new, like 2 or 3 years old. It was just a natural progression of once you design something, wanting to see it, you know, move into more. Like I was doing a lot more design, and then I was like subbing out the jobs, but then the contractors were subbing out things that would suit them so they could make a bit more money, and then the design intent wasn't there. So that's why the construction side started. And then as we moved into maintenance, we go back to gardens and see that the maintenance crews weren't quite getting it. So we kind of moved into the maintenance in that sense as well. So it's more of a holistic kind of approach.
Yeah. And that helps, like I've said a couple of times with advertising, because you're seeing it as the garden grows, so you can take photos when it's starting to look established rather than first thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you could. Yeah, all the way through. It's just good for everyone to, even the designers, to go and have a look at the ongoing maintenance and stuff to see how stuff grows. You know, a plant in a pot looks great, but it could turn into a massive tree, and you kind of need to know that.
Yeah,
how something's gonna grow.
Yep. And do you have dedicated maintenance staff, or is it?
Yeah. dedicated maintenance staff. That's all they do. There's a couple of guys which we're putting on trial that are interested in swapping between construction and maintenance, which I'm also fine with.
Yeah, because then they get more skills as well.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, but you got to be enjoying what you're doing. That's part of why I started my own business. You do so much of it. You work so many hours in a week. You got to enjoy it.
Yeah. And do you have a lot of people asking for you? Like, do you do a lot of the designs, or how does that all work?
Yeah, so I do a lot of the initial consultations and concept stuff, but I can't set up a page in Vectorworks. I don't even know how to turn it on. Like, I'm completely computer illiterate. Like, I do these sketches for the guys in the office, and I have to then go in and translate them because they just make zero sense. My scribbles are just, and the guys in the office, like Curtis and Shane, will really develop the design and kind of do a bit more detailed stuff. But we're always in contact. So it's the good thing with technology. You can always kind of, what do you think of this? What do you think of that? And then review it. I like it. I don't like it. This works. This doesn't work. That kind of stuff.
Yeah. So do you have plans to grow the business? Like you said, you're always looking for advertising. You're looking to put more on? Or?
I would rather do less really well than take on too much. I've learned in the past. I have taken on too much and it's kind of overwhelming. So I'm happy with where it is at the moment, the size it is at the moment, because we're producing really good quality work. All our clients are super happy and we're getting a lot of referral work. So that's kind of ideal.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny because people are always thinking they need to be growing and doing something different, but you could just do what you're doing really well. And then you achieve the goal. You
achieve the goal. Yeah. And you're not as stressed. I mean, you'll always be stressed about it because you want to do your best for the client. And we're in the crazy business of building outside. So it can be quite stressful and difficult, but yeah, I think do less better is a much better way to go, much more satisfying.
There's one project that you did, which I had obviously nothing to do with it, but I get nervous thinking and looking at it. That's in the Shangri-La in Singapore. We had 35 tons of basalt on a wall.
On a wall that could only take, the floor could only take a 6-ton load as well. So that was such a great project to work on because it was just so out there, like because of Chelsea, I was doing some work in Hong Kong and then the people in Hong Kong said, can you come over to Singapore and look at this wall for us? It's super exciting to go as a landscaper. We're going to pay for you to come out to Singapore to look at this hotel. And then I was working with an interior designer and he's like, I think it should all be stone. And like, so working with an engineer, the interior designer and the owners of the hotel, trying to work out how could we get this thing to look good and keep going and ongoing maintenance of it. And it was pretty stressful. And in the end, we worked out that it was probably better that we took a crew over there and stayed over there and actually built it ourselves. And that's when we learned that we could only put 6 tons on the lobby floor. So the crane was, I think, 6.2 tons, and we're there trying to put 35 tons on this. But the engineering, like we basically had to build 2 columns that spanned the 3 stories of the lobby that were independent structures, so we could then have a wall suspended behind that. So it's all like this giant suspended concrete that we would then drill the basalt into. Yeah, and we had a stonemason, a guy that we worked with in Chelsea, come out from Scotland to help put the stone together, and he's done a great job of matching all the basalt to make it look natural. But then it got to the fun part of putting the greenery on the wall and all that stuff, and that was a bit of a buzz. But standing back when they took down the scaffold that we're working on and just looked at it, that was probably one of the best projects I've done, like the most proud moment of projects. You just look back and it's just insane. The whole look is insane. Yeah, it
looks amazing. Like it looks really natural with it because the depth of the plants and the rocks, like they're not flat rocks, they kind of stick out a bit.
Yeah, for sure. So we had it was a bracket. You know how like when you're trying to plumb something up and you've got screws on bolts on the top and the bottom, screws on the top and bottom, and you can move the plate. It's kind of like that, but on a vertical option. So we had to chem set the bolts into the wall, put the rods on, chem set the bolts into the basalt and try and line them up with a Franna crane. It was just, mind explosion.
How long did that take?
It was about 2 weeks.
All right.
Yeah.
That's pretty quick.
Well, 2 weeks for installation. The planning was a hell of a lot longer. Yeah.
And did you quote a project like that?
Yeah. Yeah, because they wanted a fixed price. They didn't want it to be.
Yep.
So, and we had 2 weeks and that was all we had to do it. So the labor component was quite easy because it was like, well, that's what we've got. They dealt with the flights and accommodation because we could stay in the hotel. So yeah, we did quote it.
Now, do you do many designs like interstate and any other internationals?
Not as much international because of COVID at the moment,
Right.
but do a lot of interstate design, Melbourne, Brisbane, those kind of areas. But we only build in Sydney.
Yep. And do you go out to, well, will you have someone go out to all those designs, or is it like a bit of Zoom?
Mainly Zoom, we do those. Sometimes we have to go out. If it's a relatively flat block and the architectural plans are good, we can kind of work it out without going there and just doing it via Zoom. Sometimes you just have to go.
Yep.
Yeah.
Especially if it's like Port Douglas or Noosa or somewhere.
Somewhere really nice.
They don't have Zoom there, so you have to go there.
That's exactly right. You have to go there with your boardies on, yeah.
Yeah. When you went to Better Homes and Gardens, you got to work with Graham Rowe a fair bit.
I did, yeah.
Does that make you regret your decision?
Absolutely. I was thinking, what the hell? I don't want to work with this guy. This guy talks more than I do. So Graham is actually, he was a researcher on Better Homes and Gardens. He's now a real estate agent, which I find hilarious. But he's coming to help me on my Melbourne garden. So he's coming to help me plant out. I'm not going to get him to build anything because he's useless at that stuff. But his plant combinations are really nice. So I'm looking forward to working with him again to we've got some pretty cool plants coming actually. So
yeah. And just before we started recording, you talked about what you were where you were filming today. Explain that for us, and then tell me how you get to see awesome things doing.
Yeah, so I'm staying in Ballina, in a hotel room in Ballina now. We went to a place called Brook Farm. So I interviewed these guys on my podcast actually. They run a macadamia farm up here, but when they bought the place, it was completely degraded cattle farm, really compacted, not a tree on it. And they have planted a rainforest and I think 35,000 rainforest trees, 8,500 macadamia trees. And this thing just looks incredible in like half a generation. It looks like a completely mature rainforest. But what they're finding is the more they look after the rainforest, the better it is for their bottom line, because it brings in all these birds like owls and stuff, which attack the rats. So they don't have to spray for pest diseases, any of that stuff. It's all kind of looked after by the rainforest. So you get to see some amazing stories like that on this show. I said that I spoke to him on my podcast first, but when you look at the pictures, if you look up Brook Farm online, you'll see the pictures before and after. It's mind blowing. It's just like, we have to go and see this place. So pretty cool that I can do that stuff as well.
Speaking of your podcast, is it 3 seasons you've done on that, or just the 2?
2 seasons. I think we're about to start the 3rd season. Yeah, it's called That's How We Grow. It's in partnership with Still Garden Power Tools, and I get to talk to some great people on there. Yeah, I've had some of the guests that you've had as well, Paul Wangay, people like that. So
your episode was a lot better with him. I reckon I was listening to it and thinking, he gave you a bit more than what he gave me.
Yeah, well, I think he put his place on the market, so he didn't tell me that in his podcast. I thought he was going to spread stress, but he didn't seem stressed about it. But yeah,
I saw Jamie Drury bought it for 11 million.
Yeah, Jamie's going to have an influence on it, which is cool. It's a great property. It's iconic, isn't it? It really is.
Yeah. So how did your partnership with Still start? Because I love their I'm building a house at the moment and going to have some grass in there for the kids. Yeah. And one of their robotic lawnmowers is on my shopping list because I reckon they're amazing.
They are. I love robotic lawnmowers. The Australian market hasn't quite picked up on them yet, but I think they're awesome. But Still approached me to do some stuff, the podcast and some ambassador stuff for them. And it's weird that the companies I work with, like, I'm really lucky that I get to work with some of the best companies in the industry. But the ones that I find the best are the family-owned companies. So I work with Rich Grow, they're family owned. I work with Lawn Solutions, they're family owned. Still is still family owned.
All right.
And it's just great to work with some of the best companies that I use day in, day out. So when they come and say, can you come and prance around in front of a camera for a bit and support us? I'm like, yeah, of course. Use it every day.
Yeah, and the way that the battery operated tools has gone is insane as well. Because there's I'll prefer to use sometimes battery operated over power because you've got to get a lead out and run it. And the other one, they're pretty much on par.
There's no going back to petrol powered for me. Even their chainsaws, the battery powered chainsaws, have got enough power. The only thing which might, because I've got 5 acres, they need a good whippersnipper with like a metal, I call them the wheel of death.
Yeah.
Battery that can keep going with that all day would be great. Yeah.
Yeah. So what's coming up in the future for yourself and the business, apart from the garden show coming up?
I'm all consumed by garden show at the moment. It's amazing how much mental space it takes up. once it's all done, I can think about other stuff. But still doing better homes. My book is coming out in the UK this year as well, so I have to do some promotional stuff about the book in the UK, which is good. But yeah, it's all garden shows. Those funny, they just take up so much mental space. You just got to think of absolutely everything, you know. And all the ones I've done, I've never got a gold medal, and
All right,
never got a gold medal. I've got 2 silver gilts, a bronze from Melbourne, and a silver for the Sydney one. So I'm really like just putting everything I've got into this just to see what comes out. You can't really go there for medals, but it's kind of inspiring me to really think of absolutely everything. Like I'm staring at design every single night.
yeah.
I've got it set out in my property. I've got 2 shipping containers set out, and I'm walking around it all the time. So yeah.
Yeah, so because yours has got, you're using shipping containers in yours, aren't you?
Yeah. So it's sponsored by Ridgegrow, and they said, "Oh, we'd like you to do like a container garden with all our potting mix and stuff, meaning pots." And I went, "Oh, okay, I'll just get 2 shipping containers then." That makes sense. So yeah, it's kind of a play on recycled and really kind of high-end materials. So with these shipping containers, we're going to paint completely, put a timber cladding on them. One's going to have a rooftop garden. They've got beautiful stone throughout them. We're going to have a hanging fireplace in one. It's just going to, yeah, should be cool.
And is your construction crew coming down to build it?
Well, we're prefabbing it now, and then we'll drop it in. So my crew are gonna come down, but I'm sort of staging it a bit because I also have to pay for accommodation for everyone and to get down to Melbourne. So trying to stage construction crews and planting crews and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, like I've said to a few people who are come from interstate, like I struggle coming up from Geelong, which is an hour away, let alone coming from interstate. So I don't know how, like it'd be a nightmare to organise that.
You go back to university days of sharing a room, which is not, no, as a 40-year-old father, you don't want to be going and sharing a room with the apprentice again, but you have to do it. So you do it.
Yep. Yeah, it's a good experience, but staying in a nice hotel is a good experience as well.
Yeah. But there goes your budget.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Come up with one plot. I stayed in a nice hotel. Here it is.
Yeah. Last question for you, Charlie, is who do you think would be a good guest to have on the podcast?
Who do you think it'd be? You've had some cracking guests, actually. You had Graham Rose, your first guest. I know that. Who would be a good person to have on your podcast? What did your listeners send you questions, as in what they want to see?
Sometimes, yeah.
Yeah. Are they more interested in like trade-based stuff, business stuff, or just general landscaping?
I get a few more about. They want to hear some more maintenance stuff because I don't get enough garden maintenance folks on. It's more designers and builders.
Yep.
But yeah, it's more about technical sides of things from the landscaping side of things.
Yeah, there's some great people at Sydney Royal Botanic Gardens who you could get on. But there was a guy who actually worked for me who moved to Tasmania, a guy called Niall Lambert. He was my horticulture manager. I could try and get him on for you because his plant knowledge is just mind blowing. You know,
yeah, cool.
Mine's not bad, but then if there's something I can't find, text it to him and it's back within seconds. He knows exactly what it is, knows how to care for it. It's just,
Yeah, I do like a plant nerd.
Yeah, he was trained in the UK, but also did a lot of work at the Botanic Gardens. So his knowledge is incredible. He'd be a great person to chat to.
Oh, awesome. I'll do that. Thank you so much for coming on, Charlie. Really appreciate it. And thank you for working around our time.
Pleasure. We finally got here. Yeah, we tried to make this happen for weeks, didn't we? We finally got
it's been well worth it.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.